Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, Danny Parkins has gone from the most talented young sports talk radio show host in the country to one of the co-hosts on Breakfast Ball and FS1. An interesting guy who's got a lot of different thoughts on a lot of different things. And so I'm going to try to bring him on regularly here on the volume. You know, the hard job that has a comedic feel to it and has instant reaction because of X or Twitter is being a football analyst.
Oh, yeah.
Because football is the most popular sport. You're judged every 8 seconds because that's about how long plays last. People aren't judging Joe Buck or Mike Tirico every 8 seconds. They're following the play. But they are judging Chris Collinsworth and Tony Romo and Tom Brady. And it was thinking about this with Tom Brady. So let me just tell you how I see one of the things that offends me about Bitcoin, NFT. Success is hard. And people who invest in Bitcoin, I always think it's a shortcut. I've been in the stock market since 88. I've been buying and selling real estate, over 20 homes since 89, 90. I've had swings and misses. My career has been since 1987. It's hard. We put in a lot of hours. Tom Brady's put in as many hours as I have or more being a quarterback. So when people are trying to sell me an NFT, it's like, well, you don't want to put the work in. You're going to be diluted into this is get rich quick. And of course, it's a paradise for grifters, and NFTs all bullshit. 99% of them are all bankrupt. And I think Bitcoin, similarly, you can't buy a Whopper at Burger King with it. I don't care if you have 8 million Bitcoin, you can't buy anything with it. Congrats. So, and so when people pitch me on it, it just feels like, oh, you don't want to put the work in life. You don't want to have to like study stocks, because that's what Warren Buffett does all day long. And he's 88, study stocks all effing day. And so I'm kind of offended by the idea of Bitcoin like it's a lottery ticket. I buy it, talk to a loser on a Reddit board. I'm sorry, the economic future of America isn't going to be guided by a 26-year-old gamer in a one-bedroom in Sheboygan. Like, you know, Peter Lynch, Warren Buffett. Like, it's hard. Jamie Dimon in New York. These guys are...
Yeah, listen, it's very hard. And I remember being told about Bitcoin when it was at 2,500. And I was like, I don't get it. And then it went to 60,000. And I'm like, oh, damn. Yeah. I wish I would have taken the time to actually understand it, because I know some smart people that have definitely made a ton of money in crypto. I'm with you on the NFTs completely, but is it real money? What's the future of it? What's the end game of it? I have absolutely no idea. But that's an interesting thought on like the get rich quick thing, because it does seem like a cutting of a corner in some way, but clearly there are people who have made a gazillion dollars. I would take that corner cut if I was an early adopter of it.
So my point being, as I segue into this, is that Tom Brady, because he's Tom Brady and signed for $1 zillion, people are judging him, and it's like, time out. It took him from the time he started playing quarterback in high school to the time he got really good in the NFL, it was like 9-year process. You're giving him 3 games. Terry Bradshaw started on games. Chris Collinsworth did B-level, C-level games forever. We don't allow people. What we're doing in society is we're increasingly harsh immediately. It doesn't allow anything to bake. So what becomes more attractive is Bitcoin and NFT and overnight sensations. But to do that, you have to take a shortcut. And to be great, there are no shortcuts. Michael Jordan, Scotty Scheffler, Tiger Woods, they started at 3, 6. So when Brady gets criticism, I'm like, you guys understand? It took him 9 years of high school, college, and pro football practicing every day before you're like, and by the way, even when he was winning Super Bowls, the first several, it was like, well, he's a system quarterback. And nobody gave him credit. Mahomes is so brilliant, you immediately gave him credit. But I find it's one of the things in society, it's like we are killing the bait. And bake is great, is how the great happens. And we're killing it. We young people try stuff, they fail, and we crush them for it. It's like, hide, just keep baking. Shit takes 9 years to be great at anything.
No, I mean, I think this patience is very, very hard because we live in an instant gratification society and we can get anything at our fingertips. I think about this with my kids. Like, they will grow up in the world of Amazon Prime. They could be like, they see something at a friend's house, bring it up to us, and we have to be very disciplined to not like have it on their doorstep by the time we get home. It's just you get this feedback on stuff so damn quickly. And on the analyst front, what you're saying is objectively true, but I don't have a great solve for it because I don't think Tom Brady was going to accept the job to be on the D team to do Panthers Falcons. I don't think that was going to happen. And so because he's on the A team and because he got the contract that was reported on, and because he's Tom Brady, he's going to call Super Bowls really quickly. And that's going to be in front of 150 million people. And there's going to be stakes attached to it. But what I love about these players is they can handle it. Like they are fine being coached. They are fine being criticized, and they will work at it in order to get better because you've been around enough athletes in the business. They want to know. They want, like, am I doing a good job at this? How can I be better at it? They're way less sensitive than us broadcast types. Us broadcast types can be sensitive, have egos, don't love feedback, think that we know everything that we're doing. I've worked with so many athletes that are like, hey, this isn't what I know how to do. Teach me, tell me. So if he takes it seriously, which I think he clearly is, I think he's been better game 3 than he was game 1. I've already seen a bunch of progress. If he really does work at this for 10 years, he's going to be excellent at it. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, so obviously when I bring you on, there's Chicago stories and you have real keen insight to Chicago. And it's interesting because I think Caleb Williams is one of the most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen in college. I think, there's an Elway, a little Andrew Luck. He's, like Josh Allen, he's not consistently accurate out of college. So you have to work on that with Josh Allen. Aaron Rodgers was very accurate in college. Certain guys aren't. That's not what he is. You got to sandpaper him. And when I talk about the Bears' dysfunction, you and I get it, you especially. We tend to think of Detroit, Loserville, and Cleveland. But because Chicago did have one of the great teams ever, and because they had Michael Jordan, and we've had Oprah and Siskel and Ebert, and it's a big city and everybody loves it, you tend to think, oh, the Bears are well-funded, the facilities are this, that's the outside. But take the audience to the McCaskies, the dysfunction of this organization since you've been a kid.
Yeah, I mean, they got an indoor practice facility with a roof that was high enough where you could punt a football within the last decade. Like, every other team in the league had it. So multiple practice facilities, like John Fox, to his credit, did kind of bring them forward, him and Ryan Pace, of like, hey, we need to upgrade these things. But like, that's 2017 we're talking about here. So just in terms of the investment, the practice facilities, I mean, the old thing on the McCaskies back with the 85 Bears was that they would throw around, nickels like manhole covers. Like, it is a historically cheap organization. They are owners that inherited it, right? It's a charter heritage franchise, but so their wealth is the Bears. They're not an oil tycoon. They're not real estate magnates. Their wealth is in this valuation of a football team that they don't have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars just sitting in cash from some other business. They're not the Walmart people. And so it's a big family. It's a dysfunctional family. It's been passed down. There's like 9 siblings. Some of them have no interest in football whatsoever and want to get out and want to cash in and liquidate. George McCaskey, who's kind of the face of it now, is self-admittedly just a fan. He's like, I know nothing about football. It's like, George, you've been doing this forever. Like, either learn something about football or stop saying that you don't know anything about football, because then you're like in the meetings hiring all these people. So there's countless examples of the historic dysfunction and the cheapness with the Bears, I do think it's gotten a lot better in the last 5 to 10 years, and the money has gotten so crazy with the national television contracts that it's harder to be cheap. There's some ways still, like, they were not going to hire Jim Harbaugh. That was never going to happen.
Yeah.
They were not going to give someone $20 million a year, $15 million a year with that type of like ego and celebrity. They were just not prepared to do it.
Yeah.
And that is a huge bummer because he wanted to be the Bears coach, or he was at least very intrigued by being the Bears coach for the last like 2 hiring cycles. So it holds them back in some ways for sure. Ryan Poles, I think, is really smart. And I think he's been a very good hire overall. I would not have kept Matt Eberflus. I think that was a mistake when they got the number 1 draft pick with Caleb Williams. I would have lined up Caleb Williams with the best offensive head coach you could get. Because my thing was like, by definition, you are limiting your talent pool. Like, you're only able to hire coordinators for Caleb, who then could leave to go be head coaches somewhere else. Whereas if you fire Matt Eberflus, I think Ben Johnson leaves Detroit. Like, that would have been pretty good. Like, if you don't get Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, he leaves your division rival and he comes and coaches Caleb. That's a pretty good spot to be in. So I thought keeping Eberflus was a mistake. And what I'm afraid of right now is not Caleb Williams. I think his talent is so undeniable that he actually will be able to overcome some of the stink of the Bears. We've seen that before. Like Josh Allen, to use your example, he's had a defensive head coach in Sean McDermott. He's had one guy who was maybe a borderline top 5 receiver in Stephon Diggs. Other than that, not much in terms of elite playmakers. Terrible.
Just got a run game. Just got one this year.
Yeah, and that's his what? I mean, he had Dable and Dorsey, and now he's got Brady. So he's had 3 different play callers, defensive head coach, terrible drafters. Took him a couple of years, but the talent was undeniable that he got there. So the Chargers have changed over a bunch with Justin Herbert. Bad coaches, different play callers. He hasn't won big, but as a talent has overcome it. So I think Caleb is going to be fine. What I am worried about, though, is when it was John Fox with Mitch Trubisky, everyone knew that Fox was not going to be the guy for Mitch long term, but they didn't want to fire him a year early and pay him to go away. So it was John Fox and Dowell Loggins for a year of Mitch Trubisky. Then they fired the whole staff and hired Matt Nagy. So now it's 2 systems in 2 years. And that put Mitch Trubisky behind the 8 ball. And then they did the exact same thing with Justin Fields. He was there for 1 year of Matt Nagy, and then they fired him, and they moved on to the next guy. And so then Justin Fields had 2 systems in 2 years. Went from Matt Nagy to Luke Getsy. So now you're learning 2 different offenses, 2 different play callers, 2 different sets of, ideas and fundamentals. And so if this doesn't work and you end up firing Eberflus and Shane Waldron, it will be the exact same thing that you did to your last 2 first-round pick quarterbacks. And that just, I don't care who it is, it stunts your development to not have continuity of coaching. So I'm not worried about the talent. I am absolutely worried about the coaching around him. And the line is clearly regressing and even worse than it was supposed to be. But I think a lot of that is also Shane Waldron because, and I'm giving you a long answer, but you wanted all of the context. They were the 2nd ranked rushing team in the NFL last year. It's 4 of the 5 offensive linemen are the exact same. And in theory, they upgraded at center, though it looks like they maybe somehow downgraded and Ryan Bates has been hurt. But that's not all Justin Fields. Like Khalil Herbert, Herbert was a 5-yard per carry guy. So like I would have told you coming into the year, Kevin Jenkins, their left guard, Nate Davis, their right guard when he plays, and Darnell Wright, their right tackle, who was the 10th overall pick, all better run blockers than pass blockers. And they're the worst running team in the NFL.
Yes, there's no question the O-line has significantly regressed, and most of those guys were young ascending players.
Right. And so to me, I don't believe that these guys just forgot how to run block. I think that there's something in, and I'm not able to tell you what it is, but I think Shane Waldron clearly is not doing a good job. Like Another example. Week 1,
Yeah.
Gerald Everett outsnapped Cole Kmet. That makes no sense. It makes no Cole Kmet, top 10 tight end in the NFL for sure. Young, athletic, good blocker, good pass catcher, coming off the best season of his career, homegrown kid, under contract in his athletic prime. That made no sense. And they corrected it in week 2 and week 3. And week 3 had a monster game. But it's like, how do I know more about the personnel of the Bears than Shane Waldron does? And I get that there's a learning curve, but come on, man, you're a professional coach making 7 figures. So I think Shane Waldron's been a disaster through 3 weeks, and I hope that he can correct it.
Well, I think sometimes we all know there's about 6 great coaches in the NFL and about 6 great quarterbacks. Well, there's maybe 6 great coordinators. Like, for instance, Brian Flores for the Vikings defensively is a great coordinator. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy and C.J. Stroud the last 2 weekends have said, yeah, I've never seen any of these coverages. I don't even know what I was looking at.
Yep.
Like, Brock Purdy is one of the cognitive guys in this league that is Sam Darnold played with him for a year, and Darnold's like, I've never seen anybody that good at the line of scrimmage. Like, he's it's almost like on the spectrum. Like, you're like, how does he know that? Like, he's just different. There's a Rain Man quality. Like, how does he memorize all this stuff? So Brian Flores, Viking defensive coordinator, he's just better. Shanahan is an offensive coordinator. He made Matt Schaub. Brian Hoyer had a winning record. I don't think people think about this. It's like when you get in a plane, about every 6th pilot is great. The rest of them are guys. They take off, they land. They're not doing Sully on the Hudson. They would have crashed that plane into the Tappan Zee Bridge of the Hudson. They would have hit a bridge. And so I think when I watch the Bears and I look at their talent, would the Bears have, like, Washington spent big money on Kingsbury. Like, the new owners, I know they went after Sean Payton. Money was not an object with Washington. Now, it just so happens the Denver owners are richer than the Washington owners, but Kingsbury, got top dollar. I wonder about the Bears. Is it like, because I look at it and I think to myself, Brian Flores, he got fired. Maybe he got a discount, but I always feel like some organizations don't hire well.
It's undeniable, man. And first-time coaches are cheaper, and you don't fire early because you don't want to have dead money on guaranteed contracts, like paying guys not to work for you. That is a place where you can win. I'm saying in the margins. That's not to minimize coaching. It's just the Packers can spend the same as the Jaguars, who can spend the same as the Cowboys, who could spend the same as the Rams in free agency, because there's a salary cap, right. There's a salary floor on players. But that is a place, coaching, where there's no cap, that you could just throw cash at the problem and get the best. Right. And that is a place where ownership can make a difference. And that's why I said, Harbaugh was just not on their list. They were not willing to do it. And so, I definitely think that they go cheap in that regard. And that's undeniably an issue. Now, but I got to be fair, man. Once they said they were keeping Eberflus, I thought that Shane Waldron's resume made sense. He had been a play caller before, and he had top, the 11th ranked offense, the 16th ranked offense, the 17th ranked offense with Geno Smith. And I was like, okay, I've seen the Bears hire first-time play callers my whole life. At least this guy has done it. And he was a part of the thing that rejuvenated Geno Smith, put him in the comeback player of the year conversation, 30 touchdown guy. I was like, if he can turn a mid-level talent into a high performer, imagine what he could do with a high-level performer or a high-level talent in Caleb Williams. So I was upset that they were in the situation where they could only interview people for the coordinator spot, but I actually thought on paper at the time that it made sense. So I'm very down on how it's looked through 3 games. I'm not completely writing it off, but they could fire him at the end of this year for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you were optimistic with Shane Waldron taking Geno to the 16th best offense. Kevin O'Connell has made Sam Darnold Joe Namath in his prime.
Well, that's
the gap I'm talking about.
Yes, no, that's why I wanted an offensive head coach. Yes, exactly. Well, and man, the NFC North, like Matt LaFleur, okay, Matt LaFleur. People were legitimately having the conversation of if Aaron Rodgers was done like 6 or 7 years ago. Matt LaFleur replaces Mike McCarthy. He gets 2 more MVPs and a couple of NFC Championship game appearances out of Aaron Rodgers. Then Jordan Love comes in and is instantly awesome, and he gets $225 million. And then Jordan Love gets hurt. Malik Willis had been in the building for 19 days, and he is undefeated with Matt LaFleur. They put up 30 this past week. You got Kevin O'Connell doing that in Minnesota, and you got Ben Johnson doing what he's doing in Detroit. There are damn good offensive coaches in the NFC North. Like Shane Waldron is a distant fourth, which was another reason why I was like, you've got to hire an offensive head coach to try to compete with these guys.
So, we've talked on the podcast. I don't spend a lot of time. In fact, I've always argued, because Skip Bayless talked Cowboys incessantly, and LeBron. So I don't talk Cowboys as much.
Good. Let's
mostly
not do it.
Because the lead in, and I'm not, it just doesn't interest me. But it is interesting that the Lakers and the Cowboys have become sort of the same business, where the brand is way better than the product, and that they're basically a family business. I mean, the Lakers are run by Kobe's agent. And I know Kurt Rambis and like him, but the Rambis family's involved. It's a lot of people close to the Buss family. And that's the same thing. It's Charlotte Jones, it's Stephen Jones, it's Jerry Jones. There's not a lot of outside influence. But they're remarkable brands. I don't think the Lakers are. I think Anthony Davis is just fantastic. I thought last year he was easily the best defensive player in the league, and Rudy Gobert, whatever. But I don't think they're a championship team. They just don't have. They're not close. These teams like Boston have like 8 really good players, 7 really good players. But I look at the Cowboys, and it's this. What I'm about to say is really insane.
Oh, good.
That if you really take a deep breath, the Cowboys have not won multiple playoff games in any year in 29 years. Now just think of that. That's not a big ask. The NFC the last 4, they've had good quarterback play. Romo and Dak are B+ to A- quarterback. They're very good quarterback play in the Kirk Cousins mode. They've had offensive coaches who were more than competent. I mean, I've had some offensive coaches. And I'm always fascinated by really successful people, Jerry Jones, that have a blind spot that is so obvious. The radio hits, the fact that he wants to be called GM. And I'm like, Jerry, you're this oil maverick. You're a brilliant businessman. He and Stan Kroenke are 2 of the smartest guys in the league. Other owners lean on Jerry. Does he not get how dysfunctional? I mean, they always lead the NFL in retaining their own draft picks. And so is it ego? Is it a blind spot? Jerry's vanity and personality. I'm fascinated when I see like Elon Musk similarly. Does he not see what he is?
Well, listen,
or are they sociopathic?
I think you've probably met a lot more billionaires than I have. You know a lot of normal ones. It's not you get into this like stratosphere of ego, entitlement. You literally own the building. It's just, it has to warp your sense of reality and things that make sense. But I do think that the media sometimes gets it wrong with Jerry. And I'm not saying he's crazy like a fox or that like everything is calculated, but he likes it. Chaos is his fuel. He does not believe that us talking about CeeDee Lamb's contract and Dak Prescott's contract and Mike McCarthy's contract and his radio appearances and weird things that he says, he does not believe that that has any impact on wins and losses. He doesn't. And in fact, he probably thinks that it has an absolute impact on the ratings that they get on Sunday Night Football and at 4:25 on Sunday on Fox. And he very well might be right, because everyone cares about him. You might hate him, you might love him, but the numbers bear out. People care about him. So I think that he is feeding the sports take industrial complex because it's oxygen for him. He wants to be relevant. He wants to be talked about. It's clearly an ego play, but also it programs a lot of airtime. And that has to be good for business. I guarantee he subscribes to the all publicity is good publicity mantra. Yeah. We're talking about him, and that's making him money, either directly or indirectly. So that's what, and by the way, I also think, and I said this on the first week of Breakfast Ball because we were on before the season started, I was like, these contracts all get done. No one holds out anymore. Like not really. Jonathan Taylor for a game, Melvin Gordon for 4 games, Chris Jones for a game. Like post Le'Veon Bell, no one actually holds out. You're like, oh, they should have signed Dak Prescott early. Dak didn't want to sign early. Dak wanted Tua to sign first. He wanted Jordan Love to sign first because that just gave him more money. CeeDee Lamb wanted A.J. Brown to sign first. He wanted Devontae Smith to sign first. He wanted Justin Jefferson to sign first because they know that they have the Cowboys over a barrel because Dak had a no tag clause and a no trade clause, and CeeDee Lamb got 180 targets last year. Like if CeeDee Lamb isn't on the Cowboys, they go from the highest scoring team in the league to awful. He matters more to Dallas than any non-quarterback matters to their offense, more than Christian McCaffrey, more than Tyreek Hill. Yeah. So I think chaos is part of the formula to the popularity in Dallas. And I think it's all by design.
So I played a game today with J-Mac on the air, and we were talking about Deshaun Watson. And I said, Deshaun Watson is considered a star, but if you had a minute 30 left in a game, 1 timeout, and had to go 70 yards, doable. Same players. Would you take Gardner Minshew or Deshaun Watson to be your quarterback? And I said, I'd take Gardner Minshew because he moves about as well as Deshaun. He plays with more confidence, and I think he's more accurate. And he's like, no, that's crazy. And so we got into talking about this, and I said, Jaden Daniels or Trevor Lawrence? And I said, here's what I know about Jaden Daniels. He moves better than Trevor. He appears to be more accurate than Trevor. And I love Trevor Lawrence. But I have seen him now. That Buffalo game, which was at least the first half, a standalone game. Dude, he missed a crossing route that is any college quarterback can make it effortlessly. He missed a pass in the flat that he was low and behind him. And I said, he's too loose. I said, he looks like a quarterback that if you said, hey, you want to go golf Friday afternoon or watch more film? He'd choose golf. He's too talented to be that loose and bad on the layups.
Yeah.
It's not mechanical because he was great in high school. He was great in college, and he's shown signs. Thursday Night Football is on. It's only on Prime Video. Best season yet, packed with big rivalries and even bigger stars. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, Kaylee Hartung every week. Games you can't miss. Coverage begins at 7 Eastern with football's best party. TNF tonight, Thursday Night Football tonight. If you're not a Prime member, no problem. Sign up. 30-day free trial. Cancel anytime. Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details. You put Trevor Lawrence out there right now. Minute 30 in a game. I would take Kirk Cousins over him. I think I'd take Gardner Minshew over. I'm not joking on Trevor Lawrence.
No, I think that it is totally fair. I do think that you can lose your mechanics. Like you brought up golf, right? Like any
golfers do.
Yeah, any golfer will tell you that you can lose your mechanics, you can lose your swing. So I do think it is in play that Trevor Lawrence is, I mean, hell, Mahomes said it this week that he doesn't think that his mechanics are completely locked in, that he's relying too much on his arm and he's not not with his feet and his footwork. So I do think that when you have an arm like Trevor Lawrence, which is a top 10 arm in the NFL, it makes it possible that you lose your fundamentals a little bit more. And so I don't think they're going to bench him. Like Doug Peterson was like, anything's on the table. I'm like, I don't think it is. Like, I don't think you're benching a $250 million quarterback, but I do think that you need to be working on footwork, fundamentals, and breaking them down a little bit. Deshaun Watson in week 1 looked like he forgot how to play football. We charted it. He had 6 passes that landed out of bounds. Like they were just like straight not catchable balls. And then that's not including airmailing guys, throwing it at their feet, turtling up. So I think he's regressed. I mean, he's been a little bit better since, but he's regressed terribly. Trevor Lawrence has regressed terribly. And Minshew, it's just funny you bring him up. What I've always said about him is like, he's going to go down swinging. Like he's a fun quarterback to watch.
And he's confident.
Yes. Oh, and but delusional confidence. Like he believes he can make every throw. It's like Mario Chalmers when he was on the Heat and he had teammates that were LeBron, Bosch, and Wade. And he was like, why don't you ever draw up the final play for me? And it's like, he's like, I hit a pretty big shot at Kansas in the Final Four. It's like, yeah, buddy, but that's Dwayne Wade. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're Gardner Minshew. Why do you think you can make that throw? But like 1 out of 2 or 3 times he can make it. And so he does it. Yeah. So he's a fun guy to watch. But I will say too, man, it's hard. Quarterback play in the NFL is very clearly hard. It's hard to project.
Yes.
It's hard to pay. It's hard to be consistent in. And so that's also why, and this isn't what you asked about, but I'm going to say it anyway. Everyone being surprised by Josh Allen, it bothers me. He is clearly the second best quarterback in football. And he has been for a couple of years now. Yards, touchdowns, wins since 2020. He's second in wins. He's second in yards. And he's first in touchdowns. All to Mahomes. You look at their numbers. Now, it's regular season. Mahomes obviously has him in the postseason. Undeniable. But yards, touchdowns, wins. He's 2-2-1 in terms of ranks since 2020. And he doesn't have Andy Reid. He didn't have Tyreek Hill. He didn't have Travis Kelce. He is a remarkable football player. And so people are like, I'm so surprised that Josh Allen is doing this year. Like, why? Because he lost Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, who like quit the last 7 games of last season. Like, it just, we need to do a better job, I think, of like, oh, you're not Mahomes, so we can like pick you apart and criticize you. I'm not saying no criticism is fair. Mahomes has thrown 3 terrible interceptions this year, 4 total. Like, obviously anybody can be criticized, but like, if you've got a problem with Josh Allen at quarterback, then the only guy you're allowed to like is Mahomes. He's the only. It's a really hard position to be consistently great at.
Well, it's also I've read every Phil Mickelson book. And he doesn't have the discipline of Tiger mentally, like physically, he didn't have it in his prime. If you take one person off the planet, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson has like 8 more major wins.
Yes.
I mean, the Utah Jazz are like considered kind of a dynasty. They've got 2 titles without one player, Michael Jordan. Like we don't appreciate in life how these occasional meteors change. Like Charles Barkley never won a title. Again, go to the final against Jordan. Jesus, Charles was insanely good.
Insanely good.
I mean, you go back to those Suns teams. This was before everybody took threes. Danny, Google the games. They were scoring 134 regularly with mid-range jumpers. They were in Barkley's team changed the league.
Like the CEO of Burger King does very well for himself. Like the guy who runs Pepsi, he's great. He's got a lot of houses. Like, yeah, it's not McDonald's and Coke, but it's okay. It's okay to be second best when you're like Peyton Manning. It's great all time. Now, listen, I'm like one of the last people in the world who's willing to at least entertain a Peyton Manning was better than Tom Brady argument. But my thing about Peyton is like, I've never seen a quarterback control a game more than Peyton Manning did.
I think he literally changed the position.
Correct. And the other thing that I love about Peyton's like legacy, 4 Super Bowls with 4 coaches. Yeah. He was the system. Like, Peyton, 4 Super Bowls, 4 different coaches. That's pretty crazy.
Peyton's LeBron. He is the system.
Correct.
Tom and Montana were part and elevated a great system.
Yeah. And you can't deny what they have in the trophy chest and the winning. And I'm not going to argue against it. But singular dominance of like, this guy is the system and you win because of this guy, no matter what else you got. Peyton is in a class of his own in that regard. But yeah, it's like people are like, are you worried that Jaden Daniels is better than Caleb Williams? I'm like, I guess a little, but like, it's because it's all a crapshoot and it's about situation and no one really knows. Like, I think Caleb's going to be great and going to be fine. And I think he's gotten better week to week to week. But I mean, what would JJ McCarthy be doing right now if he was getting the Sam Darnold reps? Would we be talking about him as an undefeated quarterback?
Yeah. Well, in the preseason, it looked amazing.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, who the hell knows? Bo Nix 1 week, the guy can't throw the ball 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. Last week, he's slinging it all over the field and signaling first down and like playing with a bunch of swagger. I'm like, the league is. I can't believe that I gamble on it every week. It's impossible. Like it is impossible to predict.
Now for a segment called Making It Look Easy, brought to you by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Today, Saquon Barkley made it look easy, 147 rushing yards, a couple of TDs, both in the fourth quarter, including the game winner. Just like Saquon made it look easy, so does Morgan & Morgan. Easy to submit a claim. They have over 100 offices nationwide. More than 800 lawyers with over $15 billion recovered for over 300,000 clients. Morgan & Morgan has proven a track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. They've been fighting for the people for over 35 years. If you're ever injured, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial #529 to check out America's largest injury law firm. Winning in the NFL is hard. Hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. And by the way, let me just say this for anybody that listening in our business. I love radio. It's therapeutic. It's good for me. Television doesn't give me the same high as radio does. But I like TV because I have a really nice crew and a team and it's funny. And it's basically, I'm doing TV, radio, simulcast. So it's a little of both. Do you miss radio and the sort of the journey every day, the therapeutic journey of it?
Yeah, no question. There are just, my life right now is really weird. Like I'm living in a hotel in Times Square and trying to sell a house and trying to buy a house or rent a house and the parent from afar and be a husband from afar. But then I'm also like doing a bunch of cool things in New York. So I've had like a lot of good, weird stories and like adjusting to being on national TV. There's just a lot of weird things that happen with being on TV. But then it's like, we're going to talk about the Cowboys and the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Bengals and the Bears.
Yeah.
Whereas in local radio, I could tell an 8-minute story about, wardrobe at FS1. And like, I think it would be really entertaining and good, but there's no actual outlet for these types of stories. So I miss it. I miss my guys. I miss like the nitty gritty and the minutia of being there for the Caleb story. So yeah, I of course, man, radio is my first love. All I ever wanted to do was afternoon drive Chicago radio, and I did it, and I loved it, but it's not the same now as it was back in the 90s and the early and mid 2000s when I really fell in love with it. And so, I I'm an ambitious guy, and this opportunity came along, and so I'll always miss it. But this is the right thing for me to do.
People think big cities are all the same. So I spent some time in London in the summer, which is probably London's like Chicago, but bigger. It has the parks, great architecture, terrific food. Believe it or not, London's food scene has improved dramatically. There must be 10 Gordon Ramsay restaurants alone. And when I was in London with my wife, and my third or fourth time being there, I told her, I said, I love Chicago, and I think that's why I love London. People lament the weather in Chicago, but the springs and falls are amazing. The summers are killer. You're on a lake. And the truth is, wear a coat. London, similarly, I'm not a heat guy, so I love going to walk in Hyde Park. But, it's interesting. You think, oh, New York and Chicago. Danny's lived in two big cities. They are the opposites to me. Like New York and Chicago could not be more. People think LA and New York are different, and they are. But give the audience some sense. Do you sense a difference between New York and Chicago? Not just tall buildings. I think there's a sensibility. I think the river running through Chicago changes it. The Midwest changes it.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Listen, I'm biased. I love Chicago. Chicago's home. I think Chicago's the greatest city in the world. And yeah, you go from a garage to a garage at work and then work in a radio studio. The winter's never bothered me. Football's on in the winter. I'm going to be inside anyway. I think the biggest difference is in Chicago we have alleys. So that means our trash isn't on the street. And that means you can park in a reasonable manner. In New York, it's so condensed and no one has an alley. So the trash is just on the sidewalk and there aren't really a lot of public parking garages. So it's a lot of street parking. So it's super congested. In Chicago, it's obviously there's a ton of traffic on the highways. The traffic is brutal. But when you get into the city, you can kind of hide your car. You can kind of hide your trash.
Yeah.
So it's clean and livable and smooth. And it feels like a big, giant neighborhood. New York is congested and dirtier and louder and 8 lanes of traffic.
You know what? New York is Rome.
Yes.
New York is Rome, which is the same thing. It's just dirty and congested, and it's a lot. It's overwhelming, and they're kind of making it up as they go.
It's all stacked on top of each other. Like in Rome, it's like, here's a Michelin restaurant, here's a world-class hotel, and then 200 feet down is an ancient civilization. I'm like, oh wow, that's crazy. They just kept building it on top of each other. And that's kind of how New York feels. But there are things about New York. The bodega scene in New York is the greatest thing in the world. Because everyone's like, New York is so expensive, and it is significantly more expensive than Chicago, but you can walk into a place that looks like it should only be able to sell you like a bottle of water and cigarettes and a stick of gum in the New York Post, and you can get like the greatest pastrami sandwich you've ever had for $9.
Yeah.
And it's the only meal you need to eat all day. So New York, and New York's awesome. And also, if you find green space in New York, it feels like it was an accident.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, green space. And then it's like the most peaceful, beautiful thing ever. So I've gone to like Central Park multiple times and just chilled out because it feels like it's a complete oasis amidst all of the chaos.
Yeah, then I always had a feeling when I was in Connecticut, I didn't go to Boston ever. I went to New York constantly. And I always said there's an energy in New York it's even much bigger than Chicago, and Chicago's got energy. It is Rome. It's Rome. When you're in Rome, it is just going fast. I mean, I remember going to Rome with my wife, and you do a few touristy things, but we got Vespas, and we just went through the city. We hired these 2 guys to take us around, and it's like, get ready, hold on, here we go. And we're flying through alleys, and just the pace of Rome and New York, it's exhilarating. And I can remember there was a night in New York. It was the fall. I took my wife Ann there, and we went, And it was just a gorgeous fall. It was like 63 degrees. It got crisp at night. We went to a great dinner. It was a sexy night. And I remember telling my wife, we were in, I think we were in a meat packing district or something. It was a lot of the hipsters and the good looking people. And I'm like, I understand why people in New York think the United States ends at the Hudson River.
Hell yeah.
Like you get why they're like, Utah? Is that in the country, Utah? Like, I get why they think that.
Absolutely. Like, New York elitism is earned. Like, it's earned. Anything can happen here at any time. So this is crazy New York story. And I'm out here alone and I'm trying to like make the best of it. My wife and kids are going to be coming out here and I'm going to move out to the burbs in a house. And so but I'm in the city right now. And so I love stand-up comedy. I'm obsessed with it. I watch documentaries about it, listen to podcasts about it, go to any show. I've been to the Comedy Cellar a few times already since I've been out here. I had been a dozen times before, but a guy I know, Chicago comedian named Pat McGann, he opens for Sebastian Maniscalco. And Sebastian just did 5 straight nights at Madison Square Garden, most consecutive sellouts by a comedian at MSG. I'd never been to anything other than a college basketball game at the Garden. So I hit up Pat and I was like, hey, man, can I come to the show? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Thrilled that you're in New York. Let's do it. I go. He gives me a little backstage pass. We're hanging out in his green room. I'm just alone. I'm pumped. And he's like, yeah, you picked a good night to come. I'm like, yeah, man, of course. Madison Square Garden. It's kicking off this tour. It's amazing. He's like, no. There's 3 openers tonight. Normally it's 2. Pat's podcast co-host, me, and Seinfeld. And Sebastian had asked Jerry Seinfeld to open for him at MSG. And Seinfeld comes out. The crowd doesn't know. 19,000 people go ballistic. And Seinfeld famously hates arenas. He really only likes to do theaters and like comedy clubs. And he gets out there and he's like, this is so great. And he's doing like the Seinfeld voice. How cool is this? He's like, I'm a kid from the Bronx and I've never played Madison Square Garden before. And the place goes ballistic. And then he does 20 minutes of like Staten Island humor. You know, you're in the city, but you're on the island, and then you're in the Hamptons, and like he's just like being Seinfeld, but all about New York in front of New Yorkers, and people are going insane. And I leave the Garden at 10:30, and it's buzzing, and it's like the Knicks just hit a walk off, and I'm like, only here, the only place that guy will do an arena is MSG, and he had never done it before, and it was a complete surprise, and it was just it was a Wednesday night. It was awesome.
Speaking of comedy, I was so fortunate. And my favorite New York comedy story is I walked into Caroline's and Colin Quinn looked like he was going to bed 10 minutes later, walked in. He's like, hey, I'm going to work on some stuff. And he crushed for an hour. And he was in like gray warm-ups and in a collared shirt that I think had spaghetti stains on it. And he just did an hour. And I remember leaving with my friend, I think it was Brian. And I'm like, and this was 15 years ago. And I remember saying, dude, that guy is the most underrated comedian in the country. I'm like, everything he's on, I laugh. And he hadn't quite hit yet. Like, he'd been on shit, but it didn't work. And now he's obviously done these Broadway shows that are freaking hysterical. He's always been Seinfeld's best buddy. But I saw Colin Quinn 15 years ago. New Yorkers knew him. New Yorkers understood how great he was. But like a lot of people, you know, Utah didn't. Now everybody like pays attention, knows he's absolutely brilliant. And then I saw, and speaking of comedy, my wife got me tickets in the front row, John Mulaney at the United Center in Chicago on the rehab.
Hell yeah, I was not in the front row, but I was there.
That's the best hour of comedy I've ever, because it was so raw and so personal. And I told Ann, I said, that wasn't comedy. That was an hour of therapy. We were in an hour of therapy, an hour 15. And the fact that these comedians, Sebastian, who I'm going to in Chicago, I think in November 9th, 8th or 9th or something like that. These, you know, I've always said this about comedians, and maybe I think this about you and I in our business. We don't get a third take. Actors get 20 takes. They don't even write their own material. Sebastian, Mulaney, Seinfeld, Colin Quinn, they write it, they perform it, one take. I think comedians, people just do not understand how lucky we are to have people that can stand in front of 10,000 people, I would be terrified. They're brilliant.
Brilliant.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you call a touchdown. One thing's for sure. TDs matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, they don't care how you score them. They want to bet on touchdowns. You want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings Sportsbook, #1 place to bet on TDs. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Betting something simple, like a player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app. Make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets instantly and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The code's Colin. Again, the code, new customers bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
It's the most impressive art form to me. And it's the purest, because this is not like an original observation by me. I think it was Seinfeld who I first heard say it. They are judged every 8 seconds, because that's about set up to punchline on average, somewhere around there, and they've got to be getting a laugh. Now, some people will tell a longer, more drawn out story, and it might not literally be 8 seconds, but we can be giving a take on, Breakfast Ball or The Herd or whatever, and we think we're crushing it, and maybe we are and maybe we aren't, but we're not getting any feedback. So we can live with the delusion that we're crushing it. Mulaney has definitely bombed. Like Seinfeld has bombed, Quinn has bombed, Rock has bombed, like and because they got to eat it sometimes to figure out what works and to get the new material. And they have that like feedback loop that we just don't get. Like Billy Joel knows when he performs Piano Man, it's going to crush. Like Brad Pitt, when he walks into a restaurant, knows he's going to get fawned all over. These guys, every time they go out, they could eat it. And I think that it's so impressive to be able to create something from nothing. And the other thing is, like, we have games. Like, we are talking about actions of other things. These guys are creating, guys and girls, are creating their own material completely from experience, completely from thin air. And there's 10,000 people or 40 people or whatever it is. We're basically sitting there with our arms crossed being like, make me laugh, funny man. And then they do. It's amazing. I could talk about this. Dave Attell, incredible. Neil Brennan, incredible. There's so much good comedy right now.
Yeah. Danny Parkins. What a fast 50 minutes. Thanks, buddy.
Oh, anytime. I love this. And especially when my wife and kids are in Chicago, I literally have nothing to do.
All right, my man. Great stuff.
All right, buddy.
College football preview presented by JLab. JLab has the best audio products in the game. They're ready to take care of you this football season. So whether you're traveling to watch your favorite team play or just streaming the game at home, find the blue box and the JLab audio products at Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and more. Just visit jlab.com. So I like USC to beat Wisconsin soundly. It's a 15.5-point spread. So Wisconsin's coming off a bye, but they lost their starting quarterback for the season. Tyler Van Dyke got injured against Alabama. He is out. This is a team that's the opposite of Michigan. They do not run the football. They average 4 yards a rush, and now are with a backup quarterback. So, Luke Fickell is yet to beat a ranked team at Wisconsin. This is a work in progress. We knew the defensive line of Michigan would give USC's really talented but young O-line issues. They don't present any of these problems. They don't have a dominant run game. They're good up front, not special. And USC at home, passing offense and something to prove. USC did stop the run, except for about 3 big carries. So you say, well, Michigan averaged 6.3 yards a carry. That's not what they were averaging before that last big run. I think USC wins in LA. They win comfortably. They get their first Big Ten W. USC brings back essentially the entire offense next year outside of their center and a running back. They're young, but really talented. I think they blow the Badgers out. So I think Alabama is a 2-point underdog at home against Georgia, and I like Alabama. So Georgia's banged up on the offensive line. Now, they do have 42 straight regular season wins, and Alabama got into one of these stretches a few years ago where they were just unbeatable in the regular season. But I don't think Georgia's playing particularly well. I watched Kentucky's defensive front push the Bulldogs around for long sequences in that football game. I thought Kentucky was the more physical team up front, and Georgia again is banged up. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, this is what he did at Washington. That offense got really good really quickly, and right now Bama is 6th in the country. They have an athletic quarterback, Jalen Milroe, who also throws one of the prettiest deep balls in the country. So they can run the ball. They can throw the ball, and particularly deep. The quarterback is athletic. So Milroe already has 14 touchdowns this season. And in his last 13 games against ranked opponents, I think Kalen DeBoer is special. He's 12-1. Oregon had better players. Washington had Kalen DeBoer, and they beat him 3 straight times. I think Alabama as a dog wins this game outright.